Hello and welcome to Buying and Beyond, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of retail buying. We're Kate and Linz, and together we have over 30 years experience in retail.
We'll be talking all things retail buying and beyond, so grab your drink of choice and come and have a giggle with us. Hi Kate, episode 4.
Can't believe it. We're here. Welcome back to another episode. So how are you doing, Linz?
I'm feeling buzzing actually.
Buzzing. I love that
I
word.
know. I mean, I think it's just because I just really quickly downed a carrot and ginger juice. So
Honestly,
the
every
zing in my
episode, it's like, what powers you? We should be sponsored by Ginger Shots.
We should, if anyone really wants to sponsor us. I mean, Pret, if you're in the room, Pret.
Powered by Ginger Shots.
Love it. Everybody needs to be powered by Ginger Shots.
So today we're going to be talking about all things suppliers and how we rate a supplier.
And obviously the best supplier lunches.
Joking. Does help.
Yeah, it does help.
But it's another huge topic, and there's so many different types of suppliers. We will start with a focus on own brand suppliers. So we're kind of talking more factories and often the Far East, sometimes the Near East. A lot of our experience has been with suppliers in China, Taiwan, Vietnam and India. And I think we've mentioned some of those already during our development trip conversations. But we've also worked with European suppliers, so Italy, Portugal, Turkey, etc. And often a lot of UK-based suppliers, and many of those have got factories in the Far East. We've also worked with branded suppliers, which is another kettle of fish altogether.
Yes.
But anyway, as I said, we're going to start with own brand. So we're going to talk factories today. So let's start with... how do you start to build a supply base? So, like, how many should you have? How do you find them? Do you Google them? But then how do you know if they're any good? Like, what are the first steps? Like, so
it's such a difficult one, isn't it?
I think we talked about, when you join a department, often there's already some suppliers there.
Yeah.
But if you're introducing a totally new product category, so
how
you've
do you
been
start
tasked on bringing on a whole new area that the company's never done before.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Yeah. I think when I met with some of these challenges, I think the first thing I do is try and ring round for some advice from friends that maybe work in the industry and have I'm not saying they're going to give me access to their suppliers or their factories, but ring round, find out how they did it, how they started, which is always a really good way to sort of like get your ideas going. Seek out international trade fairs. I know I've mentioned that so many times, but I can't say how great they are.
Trade fairs are a great place to
really
start.
Great place to start.
And even looking and trying to sort of see who people that you admire work with, that can be a lot harder to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think you also get inundated. I think people get a bit freaked out by this, inundated on LinkedIn by factories. And you think, how do I know if this person's any good? And quite often I don't find what I'm looking for via that route, to be honest, because it is really hard to find the ones that are the right reputable people to work with. But I think in some cases, if they go with your gut, like if they are presenting a really good PowerPoint deck that clearly shows that they're working with some really big retailers in the UK, especially when you're bringing on someone new, you want to know that they are really in the know about the testing requirements. Then they're worth a phone call. They're
worth
worth
having that
chat,
conversation. Do you know what? I get absolutely inundated on LinkedIn by people, and I think I ignore so many of them, I'll be honest. Or I get direct emails as well.
Yeah.
I don't know how they get them sometimes, but I think sometimes it's a chance. They chance it. They they think about the format of what the email might be.
Yeah.
Like your email address might be,
yeah.
and they just chance it. And I get so many of them, and normally so busy on a day-to-day that if I'm really honest, I ignore them. Particularly because often they have a similar spiel.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you need to have a certain way of pitching yourself to get my attention.
100%. Same for me. I'm not up for an essay. I cannot read it. Straight in the bin. So sorry, but it
needs to have a catchy title as well. The number of things that I think go amiss. But I have to say, when I have got a new category coming up and I need to do that research, I will have a quick sift through to see if there is anything that I'm catching.
Agreed. Yeah.
But as you say, like, often if it's someone that's already working with someone, understands testing requirements, and kind of understands what's sort of you might need, like, that's a big pull. So,
yeah, it is a big pull.
I think that can be important. It's funny, actually, isn't it? Because often when you go to a trade show, it's not until you get chatting that you find out who they can work with.
Yeah.
And many times, like, you can find a supplier showing, like, some crappy product, no offence, but at a trade show, and then when you get chatting, you find out who they work with, and you're just like, God, why aren't you showing some of those great pieces
absolutely.
that you do for, like, X, Y, or Z brand? And I don't know, maybe they don't feel comfortable doing it, maybe the brand doesn't want you to show it.
Yeah.
But show something of that quality
so
to draw people in.
Yeah,
because sometimes it's just been that they've been lucky that I've stumbled across it, or that there really hasn't been that much, or it's been I've literally just got to the trade show and they've just been right place at the right time, and I've been like, okay, let's have a little chat.
Yeah,
to get me going. But actually, if I'd have seen them at the end, I might have just walked past because they didn't grab me.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't pull me in.
I think it's worth noting as well, obviously, there's different companies have different capabilities. So if it's a slightly smaller company, they haven't been used to doing direct buying, they don't have the processes, they're not au fait with the shipping criteria. There's a lot of processes to set up within the business. I think that it can then be more beneficial when you're first starting out with a new category to go to a UK supplier that can do white label. So they will kind of set you on the right track. They already have the established factory supply base out there. They'll often take you out there on a trip with them, so you can start to learn firsthand, like everything that we've been talking about in the previous episodes. You can start your education on this category, so don't run before you can walk. Don't just go straight to funding a direct factory if you don't have the infrastructure in your business and
you're not going to be able to meet those minimums.
You're not going to be able to meet those minimums. It's going to be an absolute headache nightmare. You don't have the sealing process. You don't have the people out there on the ground. I think there's certain categories where it's really beneficial to do that, and it's quite easy to do that, but you still need a balance of what I call full service vendors, which are these people that do white label, and having a direct factory that trust, and you've been on a journey with. Like, I often don't bring them on year one. I'll go out on a trip, and that trip will be exploratory, and it will be, let's go meet the team, see the factories, and then they can become part of the development process for the next year.
Do a bit of initial
so it's a
maybe.
long process. Like, don't jump straight into thinking, oh, this is a great cost price, I'm just going to jump on this, because it can have a bit of serious consequences.
It can come and bite you in the bum, can't
Definitely.
it? If you put too many eggs in one basket.
Yeah,
definitely tread carefully and do some sampling with them, but also bear in mind the hit. Like, there's a certain hit rate.
Yeah,
that you want to meet, because so maybe just do a couple of them, a couple of cross costings, send them a design brief and see how they translate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of how many you should have, again, I've picked up departments where they've got hundreds of suppliers. I mean, I'm being dramatic, but they've got so much of the budget spread so thinly that no one means anything to anybody. So it's really like you need to pick the right people to work with, really. And especially when you're doing own brand development, you want to make sure that you're focusing that category with the right people, with the right full service vendor or direct factory.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you're kind of a small-ish size business, that you might want to look at working with a wholesaler. and just bringing on a couple of products to try and see how it works, because you can be a lot more flexible with your minimums and you can just try something, see if it works, and and then go from there. I do think it's interesting as well that how we started it, sort of saying like, how would you go about it, and talking to friends and seeing if they would recommend. And that is a hot topic that we've discussed a few times. Like, actually, what about recommending and sharing suppliers? I know that you've met with a supplier that I've worked with in a previous company, and you've messaged me because they've told you that they work with my business and they work, not specifically my name, but that they work with my business. So you've messaged me to say, these people say that they work with you. Like, is that true? And I've responded to being like, yeah, that's true. But it's then when they've done that link and they've noticed that you know somebody, and I remember being freaked out when they've messaged me saying, oh, hi, we met with so-and-so, and we met with Lindsay, and she and you know her. And I remember being like panicked, because I was like, oh good god, but actually, why was I panicked? When I look back and I just think, why was I so worried? Actually, it gave you reassurance. Yeah,
I mean, and I was often in meetings going, actually, my friend works with them at a very big retailer. And I was recommended them by a buyer in the office that had come from another retailer. So that's probably that's another way. Like when you've got new buyers coming in, go and ask around, especially if you work in a huge business. Go ask around. Don't know where people have been, where they've come from,
what categories they've
been working on before, who they know. And again, another supplier that I've brought on was recommended to me by another buyer who then left. And then I spent quite a lot of time getting to know them, and they work with an international retailer. So I reached out to the international retailer and was like, do you know so-and-so? Can you give me we're no threat to each other, but do you know them? Are they good? And then they said, yeah, they're a great supplier. So it's just having that reassurance and not being afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask, and do your due diligence that way.
And sharing supplier recommendations shouldn't limit you. It really should support your business. Give you the reassurance, and it also supports their business to grow. It can increase their cash flow. It de-risks everyone.
Especially when we worked at M&S. I think that was one of the big things that we were very cautious about, were factories not taking on 100% of our business, because you don't want to be the reason why they go under, So I always remember that as a fact. Like, it's interesting to encourage them to take on other business, like you said, because then they're just going to enrich their cash flow, enrich their business model, have more to invest in their business. So it's actually really interesting when you're working directly with factories to see all of that. Like, when you become a buyer, you don't think that you're going to get involved in so much of that detail, and it becomes like a social economic challenge as well. Like making sure that they're going to still be in business. Like, it's really important as a good retailer to be ethical and making sure you know exactly what's going on in your supply chain.
I think it would be great to have a forum to show like who factories are working with, and like so you all know where you stand. Like, if we share more information on suppliers and factories, we can protect all of our businesses. Like, if you had something a bit like a TripAdvisor, but for factories, like complete transparency. It encourages, like, as you say, like more
great
positive,
lunch.
It encourages more positive, like, factory ethics, and it will help support good factories and suppliers to grow, because you're listed, definitely. And you've got, a good rating, and more people want to work with you, and it's circular, isn't it?
And I think that'd be brilliant.
I think it'd be so good. And I just think some companies can be so careful about not sharing this information and not sharing suppliers, and they're real pressure. And sometimes it can feel like you have to go digging.
Like it's a secret.
Like, as you say, every buyer moves on and takes with them
that knowledge,
the knowledge of their favourite suppliers and who they've worked with and who was good and all of that. And so that knowledge is moving around, but let's make it a little bit more open. I remember once we were trying to source a new category. I remember my buy manager at the time being like, oh my gosh, I've managed to get hold of like the sheet of X retailer who we wanted to kind of emulate and do similar kind of category to, of all of their suppliers. and it had all of their supplier names
God.
and it had all of their contact details. She was like, it's brilliant, it's like gold. And I was like, well, yeah, it is, but it doesn't have the rating of how good the supplier is. Like,
Absolutely
I have
not.
no idea whether the company's looking to grow, maintain, or reduce its business with that supplier.
You don't know if they've had any product recalls with them.
Yeah. So I was like, it was all sort of secret squirrely and like exciting to have it. But I was like, what benefit is this to me really? And it just made me think, like, why are we being so secretive? And I've had it where, obviously I mentioned where we've had a similar supplier, but I've had it where I've been on a trip and then I've been like, oh my gosh, they work with so and so, and I've then messaged a friend being like, oh my gosh, I'm at blah blah, and they do all of your X product, and they've been so shady back to me about like not really wanting to talk about it. And there's almost like this fear.
But you're seeing it firsthand. It's not a secret.
Fear culture.
I think it's more on the supplier, to be honest. I think it's not right to be sharing other people's ideas and development completely 100%. But it's more on the supplier with who they want to work with rather than us chatting about who that supplier's working with.
Yeah, and I think exactly that. It's like retailers all about wanting to protect their design, but it is on the supplier to make sure that the design is protected.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, if it's an open forum of who's using who, like then you've got the transparency in terms of like who your supplier's working with, and so whether if you see a knockoff sample come along, like you'll know if it is from your factory or not.
Yeah, and on a side note, group buying is becoming such a popular thing now across retailers. I think that there's so much opportunity in group buying and learning from each other, and I especially in one of the industries I've worked in, I think it's especially when you sort of look at that from a market point of view. So if you go over to the Netherlands or France or Germany, whatever, and see what they're doing and sort of start to form relationships there's some real interesting opportunities, So, and that's about sharing information where there isn't any conflict there,
Yeah, it's all about sort of seeing suppliers really as a tool, and tools should be widely available. Like they are a tool to create a product.
Yeah.
And so retailers shouldn't really be scared to share those tools.
It's like the Kingfisher Group. They're a prime example of that model. They supply all different hardware businesses and, but the customer doesn't see that and there's no conflict to it and everybody's getting a huge order and a good cost price and the good quality, etc., etc. So
yeah, it works out.
It
doesn't
works
it?
out.
It's not about stealing ideas.
No.
It's not about, that's your design and your take on it. It's actually the background to it all. How do you all get a better bulk price, essentially? And as you say, like much better ethics and much better production runs and things.
Quality.
But I guess that there is that worry that sharing a factory with a competitor could mean that they might take your bestseller and change it enough to market it as their own, like particularly like I guess a classic or a basic. But I guess you should be safe in the knowledge that if it's from the same factory, it wouldn't be available at rock price because even if they place lots of units, the raw materials, craftsmanships, etc., would be closer in cost. I guess the problem could occur if that said competitor decides to take a hit on margin and then sells it at a much lower price, prices you out the market and turns it into a price war.
Yes.
Like that, I understand that being a bit of a concern, but then that comes down to just like ethics of retail.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
How it shouldn't be a race to the bottom. Let's be a lot fairer.
And be original as well. Be original. If your brand is strong, then people are going to come to you for that item anyway.
Yeah. If you're confident enough in your brand handwriting and your design, you shouldn't worry about sharing tools because the importance is in how you execute it.
Yeah.
And if you're known for doing something a certain way, then your customers will come to you.
Absolutely.
But I would happily debate this. I find it so interesting.
I think it's a massive debate.
Yeah, and I think we're both on the same page that it's not about stealing product ideas. It's about all of the other things that build a product
Yeah.
excluding design,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
As you've said, it's the price, the raw materials, the production.
And and back to supporting your supplier.
Yeah.
You're supporting your supplier by giving them some more business.
Yeah. And there shouldn't be the concern about being bumped off the production line either, should there? Or not having enough waiting with the supplier, because if you support the factory, then hopefully they can grow their production run.
Exactly.
They can pay their workers. They can share their critical paths. You know, the workforce can be utilised better. You know, production spread across the year. More production maybe in downtime. You know, it can be, if they're confident that they know that they've got the business coming and they can grow the business and they've got that transparency, then it can be so much easier for like planning and plotting things.
Exactly.
And outside of sharing suppliers, just sharing information and product plans for the year is really important with your suppliers, just so that they can plan.
Yeah.
You know, I think we talk about it in critical paths, plan. I mean, for, as we've said,
for it not to go to plan.
But, you know, there'll inevitably be like a repeat you need them to urgently produce, or a trend item you suddenly need to quickly brief and create. Or maybe you've got another supplier that like lets you down.
Yeah, that happens quite a lot, doesn't it, actually?
And then that opens you up with more options to place with this particular supplier. But
yeah,
I would say, I mean, it's the 80-20 rule again, I'd say, which I think applies to so many different like aspects in just generally in the workplace, but like of your plan versus your flex.
Yeah.
Because I think then that helps everyone to make sure you've got the right product in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
Which is ultimately what a buyer's trying to do.
Yes. Wow, that sums it up quite nicely, doesn't it? But then I think you're right, circling back to having those backup plans as well. Like, you do need to react on your feet because things change, situations arise. You know, there's lots of things that impact factories being delayed with their production. You know, who could have predicted COVID? Like, wow, what an amazing... Well, amazing is probably not the right word. What a challenge for all of us.
It's such a challenge.
I mean, we could do a whole season on COVID, but we wouldn't because it would be quite dull. But
well, no, I just think it's still a bit too raw.
Raw, yeah, totally. But again, a lot of what a buyer needs to do is think on their feet, problem solve, and then we were definitely thrown into having to tackle both of those with a situation that no one had ever been faced with before. So I for one, learned a hell of a lot in that season.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It was just a constant challenge, wasn't it? You were just facing situations that no one had ever faced before, and you were just having to be as flexible and just constantly firefighting, which is what you do day to day anyway, but it felt like there was more of it.
Yeah.
And you had so many more conversations, I think, with suppliers.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
some that maybe you'd speak to every sort of quarter, maybe.
Oh yeah. And became, you know,
daily.
The teams movement, wasn't it, really? But also two really conflicting scenarios as well. At one point, not wanting to take stock in because no one could get out, and to the next point, the demand.
Yeah, get the stock in as soon as you can. Oh God, the containers.
I mean, it kind of made me feel a bit happier that the consumers got a little bit of an insight into shipping and understanding where, how products come into the UK.
When you
I think it opened up a little bit
on shelves saying, "Oh, sorry, this product has been delayed."
Yeah.
But I mean, they got a bit of an insight in terms of the products not here. But I still remember seeing on so many, review websites and things about things not being available. And I mean, there were all sorts of stories in the Daily Mail or in the newspaper, and people commenting on getting that product in. I don't think people quite realised. A couple of friends I remember being completely shocked when I said the container price had gone from 2,000 to 20,000.
Yeah.
And do you remember they were doing sort of limited time sales?
Yeah.
Limited offer, because a production run hadn't run on time.
Yeah.
So a supplier hadn't been able to meet their container date.
Yeah.
So suddenly there was a container free.
Yeah.
So instead of it being 20,000, they're 5,000, and everyone's jumping on it, trying
on
to get their stock onto it.
Oh gosh,
just absolutely insane. Anyway,
Crazy.
we digress.
Totally.
But let's talk about heritage suppliers and new suppliers and how you balance those. Because at our first company, we had a lot of long-standing suppliers that we'd worked with, or the business had worked with for sort of 20, 30 years plus.
Yeah.
You know, particularly for like the core categories, you had those very established suppliers, which could make negotiations a little bit harder at times,
definitely.
couldn't it?
Yeah.
Because they had quite strong business and even personal
relationships. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And with like the owner and the founder and directors. So, you know, they would call them if you were going too hard, they'd be like, well, either they'd tell you they were going to go and tell the director, or they'd just go and do it. And you'd be like, oh, God. And you'd have to explain yourself. So your negotiations had to be well planned, because you'd have to explain why you went in at the cost price that you did.
That you did, yeah.
And that it could also make it quite hard to cross cost and move your business. So I remember some of the categories, you didn't really have that much room for bringing on a new supply base. You were quite stuck. But like a lot of the more sort of peripheral categories, you could. And
could ebb and flow a bit,
yeah, you could go and you could, I think we've mentioned Canton already, which is in China. And that's a really good place to go and find new suppliers. But often best if you are supported by an overseas office. Like I wouldn't recommend going if you don't have that.
No.
And also I remember a lot of the China factories that I found in Canton that had products that I would have loved to have done look to do pro forma terms, which depending on your business size, we were working for a retailer that just was not something that they would ever even consider. So it was a straight off no, whereas I know some retailers,
slightly smaller retailers do, because they want to get that they don't have those heritage suppliers that they've been working with for 20 to 30 years, so they can see the benefit of pro forma and the benefit of the long-term relationship with those suppliers.
They're still trying to find their place in the market, and they're looking to bring on suppliers at that point, and then gradually change those payment terms as both businesses grow.
Yeah, exactly, because those suppliers that have been with them for 20, 30 years will have probably started on the pro forma. Yeah.
But they've just got to a point where actually the orders are so big now, because you wouldn't, if you've got a new supplier, as you've said, you're not going to suddenly, you go gradually. Yeah. You go slowly. You're not going to suddenly just like chuck a load on it and just place loads of business with them, because it's too much of a risk. And those relationships, like they need to be like nurtured, and often like there's a fair bit of hand holding, not because they don't have the capabilities to do it, but they don't understand your business and your business requirements. I mean,
sometimes you don't understand theirs. Like I remember when I've been in a region that I'm fairly new to, like I needed to understand the geographical location of all these different products and what was the strength, and how they interpret a brief is different to how a factory in China might interpret a brief. So you've got to do nurturing
too. You've got to do a lot of nurturing and a lot of like supporting them to understand what you want, and actually is what you want even something that they can do? Is it even physically possible, or is it all in your mind? But there's lots of...
And being cautious that a lot of them just say yes to everything, and actually...
there's a lot of warehouse requirements as well, and that is a non-negotiable. Like I find there's a lot of product things that you can be like, okay, well, if that doesn't work, let's try it this way. You can be quite strategic with your thinking. But when it comes down to like your supplier manual and how your business is going to accept your goods,
that's not negotiable.
That is a non-negotiable. And you
how you want things packed.
Exactly. You
don't want pack sizes of 60 because you can't send it very far.
So you need to decide, like, if it's worth investing that time with that supplier. Like, how quickly are they going to get to what you need?
Yeah.
Based on your requirements and their capabilities.
Yeah, exactly.
And just generally sustainability.
Sustainability is a massive focus at the moment.
It needs to be, doesn't it?
I mean, sustainability is on the minds of everybody, like it from a consumer and a factory and a business point of view. We've got to start making some huge impact, and it's been really interesting to have been traveling for so long to see the changes out there, I think. And I think personally I'm in a fortunate position to try and drive that. Invest a little bit more in packaging that is going to be right for the environment, and then that hopefully will then bring on everybody else to do it and drive the price down. But if you can be sort of setting the scene and pushing the way forward for that, IKEA are amazing at that. I just ordered a sofa the other day and it came packaged, the whole thing was packaged in cardboard. There was not an ounce of plastic, even protecting glass with cardboard. They've obviously invested in that, and they're leading the change.
Well, especially now with all the government requirements now, the amount
plastic
of
tax.
all the waste packaging taxes and things, it's going to cost retailers, but actually it's not a retailer's it is to a point, but actually a lot of retailers are putting that on the supplier to help put that pressure on to make those changes. Because I think it's been interesting. Some have been quite slow to change because there hasn't been the pressure.
No.
But we need to lead by asking for those changes to be made and asking those questions about how to improve things, to encourage, because if we all ask, we should all get there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, just experiencing it many, many years ago at M&S, I think they really started to pioneer it with their Plan A. They've been doing that for so long, and it wasn't just a marketing ploy. They really do go to the great lengths of their factories. I remember standing in a factory having a conversation with the factory manager and my technologist, and she was talking to him about why has he got all the lights on in this workshop when there's only 2 people working. They could turn all those other lights off and just have the lights on over the people that are working. And his air conditioning unit was looking like it's on its last legs. And her and I remember her and another colleague trying to explain to him, if he just invests this much cash, how much more efficiently that air conditioning unit would run, and I'm actually saving money in the long run. So it's all these little things that you don't even think about. It's not just packaging.
No. And it's a bit like, total tangent, but putting enough insulation in your roof to cut your bills.
Yeah.
Or we've got a window at the moment that's got no insulation on the top and no insulation in the bottom because, bear with, but the lady that used to own the house, we asked her about it. We were like, this is a lovely, big bay window. Did you guys put it in? She was like, oh, lovely 80-year-old woman. Yes, I bumped into somebody in Home Base car park that said that they could put a window in for me. And they did. It has absolutely zero insulation. So we're now taking it out to put some doors in.
Yeah.
It's costing us a fair arm and leg, but it's going to mean that the insulation is so much better and we're going to save a cost, and sustainably, we're going to be much better.
Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, completely digressed. And it feels like we've only just scratched the surface on this one.
Yeah,
It
totally.
is such a huge topic.
It is.
As suppliers are such a huge part of a buyer's life. Without our suppliers and factories, we wouldn't have any product.
We wouldn't.
So ideally, you want to establish a strong network of suppliers that you can really rely on. So our 3 top takeaways from today's conversation.
Number 1, more transparency is essential for more ethical practices. If we share more information on suppliers and factories, we can protect our business and support factories to grow. Take the view that a supplier is a tool for creating the product. The supplier is there to help to execute, and if you're confident with your brand handwriting, then sharing the tools shouldn't be a concern. Number 2, support your supplier and factories by sharing your product plans at the earliest opportunity so they are confident to plan better, pay their workers well, and encourage them to share their critical paths so they can work together to utilise the workforce better and potentially increase their production. Number 3, build your supply base for the long haul. A great team requires time and investment on both sides. By doing this, you will future-proof your range, and it allows you to concentrate on developing great product and the best deals for both parties.
Great tips. We're actually really interested in knowing other people's views on factory sharing and supplier sharing. So please let us know. You can send us a DM at Buying and Beyond, or a message on our website, buyingandbeyond.com, or you can email us at buyingandbeyond@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please, please, please like and subscribe and leave a review.
And if you already have, thank you, thank you, thank you.
We all need a bit of retail therapy, and this is the perfect time for you to offload about that super cringeworthy story. We would love to hear from you all, your funny stories and experiences, or even any dilemmas. And maybe we can help, or at least find someone who can. And don't worry, we will keep these anonymous and remove any names and brands.
We would also love to hear from you on any topics you would like us to talk about. Please send all of these into buyingandbeyond@gmail.com or drop us a DM via our Instagram page @buyingandbeyond. Kate, are you a drama queen?
No,
Drama just makes things interesting.
that's true.
All these thoughts and opinions are our own and based on our own experiences working for a wide variety of retailers. These are all in the hope to entertain and educate, and not to reflect negatively on any place we currently or have previously worked.